at the viewing, waiting for Uncle Burton's body suddenly to sputter and lurch to life the way his old tractor did each spring. I know he is watching me when I turn on the tool shed's bare bulb swinging by that ancient cord that disappears up into that dark raftered cathedral of bent nails, rust, and kerosene. He is whispering in the bottomland. It is not just the wind in the pines, but him. Sometimes I hear him walking in the cornfield, just a few rows in. Though I have never parted the stalks to look, I am wholly sure that it is him. Uncle Burton had found a lot of artifacts on his land, especially near the river. Old Catawba pottery shards and arrowheads. When we were children, Uncle Burton would walk in the woods with my brother and me. He would tell me that he could hear the Indians singing in the woods near the river, that it wasn't just the water and the rocks, but voices. That he was wholly sure it was the singing of the first people ever to live there. Maybe a week before he died, I was out at the old farm, and Uncle Burton brought up the voices. He asked me if I remembered him telling me about those Indians singing. Sure I did. My brother did too. Well, said Uncle Burton, they're still there. But if they build that goddamn highway, won't nobody be able to hear them. Maybe not ever again. The old place had been renovated, rewired, but the ghost was still there. In the timbers, his loose voice, a piece of tin conversing with the westerly wind. I put the key in the tractor's ignition, but it is his hand turns it. Reaching into the Oliver's old toolbox, his arm reaches in too, helping me search out a block of wood, a length of chain. It was a good thing Uncle Burton had died a year ago happy. Instead of seeing the bottomland dissected by the bypass, the stream choked with debris, its special powers silenced by an oily film, the soccer fields replacing tobacco, the chemicals greening the turf, run off into the groundwater so that they still get cancer, those kids. Their parents doing all that driving. Used to be a night like this was filled with croakers and lightning bugs. Now it's nothing but brake lights and car horns. If man had been meant to drive, God would have made him with his middle finger eternally extended. It was a good thing Uncle Burton had died a year ago happy. Train engineers don't even blow their own whistles anymore. Sure, it's safer. The computer never forgets. Maybe all that safety will give us space to spin yarns like vibrant, transcendent spiders, orbs of energy, or maybe we will just atrophy in a casing that lacks sweet sap, nourishment. The power company murdered the mammoth oak in the pasture, paved it over. I sold the last of the cows and became wholly convinced Uncle Burton had died a year ago happy.
Sam and Larry sat on the creek bank, fishing poles cradled between their legs, hooks dropped expertly into the last pool before the creek dumps its crawdads and catfish into the muddy Henry Ford. Their daddy maintained a vague interest from his beer cooler seat. Just remember, boys, that water is all there really is. Creeks creating bulging rivers, rivers hijacked into sailboat lakes. Try doing without it for a while, and you'll see, he said, turning a long neck bud up and whistling a quirky little tune into the bottle's mouth. Sam and Larry were focused on the bobbing floats, the delightful syrupy taste of the rare cokes that Daddy had brought for this afternoon when he had taken them out of school for a little fishing. They already knew before the sun sank over the old man Goodman's willows that they may have to throw him in the bed of the pickup, and already, inside the fisherman's silence, they struggled to maintain. An argument was growing over who would get to drive. The afternoon tastes like a horse, wind swishing through the dry field, this land grown over and cleared 7 times, hills goateed with brown tufts of joint grass, a double-track trail seeded with quartz fist. The afternoon is uncomfortable as burlap. A man in a black hunting coat rises, hat, shoulders, torso, from the lower meadow, where there is no time.
Sam and Larry were the first siblings to ever be in space together. Larry had been first officer on 12 shuttle missions when his brother was appointed to lead the research team aboard Station Zebra. NASA shamelessly promoted the brothers as the new face of the National Space Program. In the past, they hadn't been into marketing so much, but that was before the commercial space companies really started to produce results. The brothers were both handsome and intelligent bachelors. They appeared side by side, smiling on the covers of over 200 magazines in the months before their mission. No one ever suspected the two couldn't stand each other. Captain Larry had always thought he could live with his brother being a Nobel Prize winner because he had been where Sam could never go. He had walked free in space, high above the earth. Sam could have the lab rats. Sam was never going to fly. He was destined to stare at tiny things under a microscope. Meanwhile, Captain Larry was riding high, cheating death, living life, fucking and fighting while his brother recorded the activities of rats, monkeys. Then Larry got the orders. His brother was heading up a program on the largest space station in orbit, and Larry was taking him there because it was good PR.
They sat in the Baptist church parking lot making their plan. Sam would grab an armload of records and dash from the curb market, where the aisle opened straight to the door and Larry's waiting Scirocco. Sam flipped through the albums. He wanted all the Kiss and the Skinner, and if he could manage to move them to the P's, he'd grab the Poco that had rows of Cimarron. Outside, Larry was watching for cops, thinking they shouldn't have smoked that last joint at the church. When Sam came hoofing out the door, the bell jangling as he leapt through toward the car, his arms stacked with a whole hack of records. The market clerk in pursuit, his red apron flapping as Larry shoved the car door open, and Sam stumbled, fell headfirst into the seat. When Larry popped the clutch, the car door swung wide open, catching the clerk in his knee, his face, and arm. They barked rubber till they left Highland and headed south toward their Hog Hill trailer. Excited, they examined their booty, some Skinner, the Poco, a band called Steely Dan, one Kiss, and 10 copies of Casey and the fucking Sunshine Band.
I saw one of them today. I was just getting in the car at Lowe's. Here he comes, shoulder-length hair, slicked back, skin tan like leather, olive green muscle shirt, and camouflage pants. Leather brogans. I'm glad I'm getting in the car already. He doesn't have time to approach me and make it look nonchalant, and there's no other way he will approach me. He wants to make it as normal as talking about the weather or asking the time when he asked for $10 or a ride across town to a non-existent job interview. I go home and measure the room to be sure of the square footage. I drive back out to Lowe's Hardware. There he is again, walking along the bypass. There is a red light. As he is legging it across the intersection, a knife clatters onto the pavement. He has to turn around and pick it up. It is a long black dagger, maybe military surplus. I cannot believe I do not see where the knife falls from or where he puts it. A woman with white hair stares out of the windshield of her golden Lexus in horror at the young man picking up the dagger, and then I am past the intersection.
Sam entered the drugstore at 9 o'clock. The fluorescent lights flickered as he passed by some sunglasses he wanted. But he marched on by toward the pharmacy, hand on the .38 in his pocket. "Give me all the Vicodin," he snarled, pointing the gun at the weaselly pharmacist. "Make it fast, motherfucker." The pharmacist grabbed a quart-sized plastic bottle from the back shelf and slid it over the counter. The pharmacist thought Stocky Sam resembled a hog, a baseball catcher, grandfather's Black Angus bull. All these images ran through his mind as he trained a new pistol that he had never fired at the Future Farmer's patch on the back of Sam's jean jacket. Sam slumped to the floor where the herbal medicines gave way to contact lens solutions, still clutching the Vicodin bottle. The fullback tackled from behind, the pharmacist would tell his tennis partner.
I drive out to Ingles for beer and gas and fresh mushrooms for spaghetti. On the way back home, I see him for the third and what I hope is the last time, walking past a closed furniture factory where Carbon City Road becomes Highway 70. Probably going to ask someone at the KFC or Taco Bell for $10 or for a ride to a place so he can get them something they want him to have or something he promises to get them. I sit here hoping he is passing through on his way to another town where his brother really did find work. I hope he is on his way there and that it is far away and that he and his brother stay there. Then I begin to wonder who they will hurt in that place, how long it will take them to get fired or quit or get arrested. I wonder how long it will take them to hurt someone there. Then I start to get paranoid. I begin to worry that it is here, that he wasn't passing through, that he and his brother are meeting here, and that when they meet, he will say to his brother, "I saw him today. I saw him just as he was getting into his car." There were so many people. If I had only come along 15 seconds sooner, and his brother will pull out a dagger just like the one his brother dropped in the intersection, and he will stick it into a wall or a floor or into a table because he always wanted to be as tough as the guys in the movies, and he will say, "No worries, we got all the time in the world. I worry I will look up and see them outside my window in the middle of the night or standing beside my car when I come out of a bar half lit and alone. I worry that I will turn around and they will be staring me in the face."
The English teacher raised her face to the fluorescent light. Her left hand clutched at her heart, the right one bending a book. This was her poetry trance. Gauging their friends' reactions, the class stirred uneasily. Larry stared at her stocking legs, praying quietly for her to sit the desk edge, to ride her skirt up those stunning thighs as she rocked to the rhythm of the village smithy or the stopping by the woods poem. He thought of carrying her over his shoulder, one hand on the black panties he'd once glimpsed, bare feet beating his belly. This was his poetry trance.
A month goes by, nothing. Then one morning I'm jogging up Union, taking a shortcut to the Greenway. It is barely light. The town is about as quiet as it ever gets. Maybe there is even a little mist still hanging around in the branches of the trees. I'm concentrating on my breathing. In a way, I'm not seeing anything, just what I need to see to keep from getting run over. But I see him. He waves. At first I think he's waving at me, but it's impossible. He isn't even facing my direction. He's standing in the corner of the parking lot of the Exxon and waving to someone on the opposite corner. I look at the spot he's waving at. His brother is there. I almost dart behind a tree in someone's yard. Holy fuck, did they see me? Of course, they're waiting for me. They're pretending they weren't expecting me. There's one more cross street between me and the Exxon. I'm going to have to get close, but I feel like I need to get close. I feel like if I cross the street now or turn back, they'll see me for certain. Besides, I feel like I need a closer look to be sure. I turn off Union Street, heart pounding hard, afraid to jog home, afraid not to jog home. I went home by curious stretches of road.
Rorschach in the briar patch, the brush pile, the copperhead cold against the pine stump, the brown grassy tendrils reaching over the field trail. Rorschach in the waltzing barn shadows, the dewy cornflower bloom, the black widow crouched beneath the busted cinder block. Rorschach in the diadem of the fire pit, the fat fresh mongrel turd, the frenetic song of the blue flies arriving. Rorschach and the blackbirds darting through sunlight, and the brown rabbit nosing the sweetgrass under the pulpwood trailer. Rorschach in the expanding pupil, the ginger's green iris, the unquent ant of his gait, stirring the morning's armor. Rorschach.
A week went by and I started jogging in a park where lots of people were and at peak times of activity. I was afraid to run alone along the river or up the mountain or even around town. Besides losing these freedoms, there were all sorts of tragic shenanigans around the house. Waking up in the middle of the night and wandering around, fearfully looking out of each and every window, checking the locks 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 times. I cracked a toe creeping around the kitchen with a baseball bat in the dark. In the back of my mind, I knew I'd really gone mad when I installed motion sensor lights on the north and south and east and west side of the house and in the backyard and driveway. Had I known that they had actually walked right by my house or driven by in the middle of the night when I was asleep or writing or both, I really would have come unhinged. There was no one to turn to, not my friends and not the police. Neither would have believed me. The police would have asked too many questions. I couldn't tell them what I knew or how I knew it because I had had the brothers do too many things for me, apparently one too many.
Larry was never crazy about snakes, but wasn't scared when he saw one hanging in a barn or slinking through the equipment shed. Grandpa said they eat the rats, got their place. Sam would carry one in his pocket to school. He liked the dry, scaly coiling around his forearm, the dead slit eyes, but mostly what he liked was how other people feared him mindlessly. Grasping a snake, he felt a power he had no words for, better than sex, intoxicating as dope, and he knew the devil would tell him what to do if he only waited. Yes, he would.
I bought a treadmill so I wouldn't have to run outside anymore. I would have ordered every meal in, but I began to fear that one of them would show up with a pizza or some Chinese, a rope, a knife, and a naked hatred. I started playing my radio lower so I could listen for menacing sounds, creeping, lurking. I kept my Swiss Army knife in my pocket. I admit I carried a baseball bat from room to room. Wherever I was in the house, there was the ash bat from high school leaning against the wall. I fed my fear. I fueled it with copious amounts of alcohol and painkillers and pot after pot of black coffee. I bought litter boxes and kept the cats inside in spite of the stench. I grew a beard. I wore sunglasses. I got a bigger knife.
They beat him till he wailed the one whole note of ceaseless pain. Then they beat him into silence. There was nothing but the house with its broken windows and its sagging front porch, the leavings of a roof, the punched teeth of old brick walls. He woke on the shit-covered floor, reached in his pocket for the glass pipe, praying he was alone, that they had had the decency to leave him something. But he heard the screen door and their footsteps, kicking glass and smashed cans. He rolled his welted back against the damp wall, set his jaw, and waited for the end.
I quit going to the store at all and used drive-thrus for all of my meals. It goes without saying there was no more swimming in the city's indoor pool. There was no more photographing wildlife off the beaten path. I stayed in and watched movies on Film Fix. Ronnie Sapp, God bless him, brought me some pot to cheer me up. I watched 2010 A Space Odyssey for the umpteenth time, and then I do the same with 2001. I contrast and compare the character of Dr. Haywood Floyd in both movies for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on end, how different he is. I love Kubrick's movie, but I like the Dr. Haywood Floyd of 2010 much better than the impersonal bureaucrat he appears to be in 2001. Roy Scheider does a great job in the role of Dr. Haywood Floyd. He did a great job being the sheriff of that town and all. Hell, what town expects their sheriff to have to fight a great white shark? I mean, the guy's marriage was breaking up, and I'm sure he had plenty of paperwork piling up, and he had to deal with all that, and he's like, I gotta go out on a boat and kill a giant shark.
Larry looked through the screen. He knew it was them. Scrawny, prematurely stooped, grinning like possums, balding, standing on apple boxes before the young hipster audience, sprawled like attitudes on chairs and sofas. Pope and Peeler, reading their Charlie Brown poems. Pope, all artistic pauses, Peeler spastic and cross-eyed. Larry almost felt sorry for them. Almost resheathed the black dagger, almost stepped back out of the porch light into the anonymous darkness, almost waved Sam back behind the naked pin oaks. But he knew it was the only way. So as Pope read about the crucified cat, Sam swung the gleaming barrel of the 12-gauge into Shaw Gray's West Asheville living room.
The poetry reading is survived by the poet, the poet's family, the poet's friends, many of whom are also poets, poets who aren't friends of the poet but who go to poetry readings with the unspoken expectation that the favor be returned. Young poets who pretend even to themselves that they saw something inspiring so they don't have to face what a waste the evening was. One of the poets in attendance claimed that the poetry reading could have been saved if they had moved at full speed ahead to the lobby of a tire store. The poet took a seashell from inside his coat and placed it next to his ear. He spread his fingers and stuck his thumb to the side of his head so that they looked like antlers or antennae. He stood like that for a moment, took his hand down, put the shell away, and continued to explain. People are tired of having their poetry interrupted by cappuccino machines. People want poetry that's interrupted by pneumatic drills. They want compression and rattling of chains. People waiting in tire store lobbies want poetry, even if it just allows them the chance to tell people how much they hated it. Or if they act embarrassed for the poet, or become angry at the poet, or walk out, or throw you out, but they want it. If we had only taken the poetry reading immediately to a tire store, the people in the lobby would have saved it. We wanted to save the poetry reading ourselves, but we were just a bunch of poets. And the best we could do was sit with it, hold its hand, and watch it breathe its last. Okay, said the poet.
Thank you.